Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As you guys can see, I got a new little RC truck here today. This is a new one from DEERC. It is the 9500E. This is a dual motor powered little RC truck, and it's pretty cool because you don't see too many that have more than one motor in them. So what that means is each gearbox, of course with two motors, is four-wheel drive. The front and the rear gearbox each is powered by its own individual brush motor, and I'll show you all that here in a minute. Let me just show you the box real fast so you can see the model number there, the 9500E, and they put a little of the info here on the side. Full scale differentials, of course, for the front and rear, and you can see there the two motors on this guy. So pretty darn neat. Now I'll show you the accessories first. You get a bag that has a cleaning brush, a Phillips screwdriver, you have your charger in here, and I'll show you the batteries here in a moment. And you get some extra body clips and screws and an extra front dog bone, because on this truck you've got plastic dog bones. And of course this is a beginner's truck, so you're going to have a lot more plastic parts. You have a plastic dog bones in here in case one would bust, which is certainly possible being plastic. They gave you a spare one. Now in the rear it's all enclosed, so I can't tell you exactly what's inside here without taking it apart. But they do have differentials. And of course, if you were to, the front and rear gearboxes are not linked, of course, because each has its own motor. And that'll help out with power, because a small little brush like 390 motor is going to have trouble compared to two motors to run both front and rear gearboxes. Now it's just friction shocks. There's no oil, so I expect it to be a bit bouncy, but there's no reason why you couldn't upgrade these relatively cheaply to oil-filled shocks on this guy. Let's just take a look there. I'll show you the battery. You get two of these. They are 7.4 volt, so that's 2S, 1500 milliamp hour lithium ion packs. These are hard packs, so you know the lithium ion. Now they don't have a Dean's plug or a T plug, which you usually see on these, and there's no balance plug, unfortunately. So when you charge this, you'll have to use the supplied charger, which is in this bag. I already resealed it. I've already charged one of the batteries I'm going to use today. And that light will just flash green and then go solid, I believe it was, whenever it's fully charged. But yeah, that gets this guy all charged up. But you're not using the balance plug, unfortunately. So it is conceivable that the batteries could get a bit out of balance. And your controller is very toy grade. I've already got everything linked up here, so it's powered on. It is fully proportional, and that's good. It takes two AA batteries. It doesn't have any kind of foam grip on the wheel. It's just plastic. Your on and off switch, your steering trim here on the top, and then your like throttle dual rate or max minimum speed. I've got it all the way up for this guy. So yeah, it's a very, very toy grade feeling controller, but it ought to get the job done, assuming we don't have any range issues or anything like that. So let's go ahead and take the body clips off. Like I said, you do get some extra ones with this that's in that spare bag, along with that cleaning brush, which is nice for cleaning the truck. And your charger's in there, and your Phillips screwdriver, and that extra dog bone, and some screws. And here is the battery, of course, that I already have charged, plugged in. Here are both of your brush motors. They do have some aluminum cooling fins or passive cooling, so that'll help radiate away the heat, because that's the biggest enemy of all electronics, especially these little brush motors. So that's nice that they have those on there. Now whenever you hit this rear suspension, you can see that entire motor moves with it. That's kind of nice. Everything moves together, and you're not putting any extra tension on anything like that. Now the front, the motor is more fixed in here, so it's not going to move with the suspension because of the design differences between the front and the rear suspensions and gearboxes. But you can see a lot of plastic parts. The turnbuckles are plastic. There's really not any metal on this, but it's a good composite plastic. It's not going to break real easy like ABS plastic. And your steering servo right here, and that is a 5-wire, so it's not a traditional one, but it is fully proportional. And of course, those are all plastic links in there. And somewhere in here is the control board receiver is buried in there. I'm just not seeing it offhand. It's going to be an ESC and receiver combo, I'm sure, for this, but you are running two motors, so it may be a bit different. And your power button is here on the side. As you guys can see, I have it turned on. It does have two white LEDs. They're not particularly bright, but that's a nice little added touch on a nice plastic bumper that will take some impact without busting to help protect the truck. You got some nice feeling rubber compound tires, but there's no foam or anything in there. You can hear that, but so the impacts will be a little different. but it should be just fine for something this size. So let me just get the body back on, and I'll pause the video so you don't have to watch me reinstall the body, and we'll get it out here and see how this truck does. So I'll be right back. All right, got the body installed. Let's get out here and just see how this little guy performs. Now, if this area looks kind of familiar to you, then you're probably a subscriber to my channel. And no, I used to fly and drive quite a bit back here. Really nice place to fly and a nice place to drive stuff. It's sort of my old stomping grounds, but it's in actuality just the other side of town where my other house used to be. But I think the cemetery backdrop there of my current location is really getting to be old. It is not a nice looking background. And I just think that, guys are probably getting tired of seeing that same old routine of driving around on the lane, down to the little area, jump and all the cemetery and headstones. It's just not a good place. So I'm gonna try to come over here. There's no reason why I can't, it's not far, and drive and fly over here more often, especially when the weather cooperates. Today's really muggy and humid, but it's not hot. This is just walking trails back here. But unfortunately, they used to have this hill would go down here and you could drive down there. And people stopped going down there. You have to go down and around to go in. It looks like no one's walking these trails, so it's all overgrown. So I'm not gonna be able to, what I'm getting at, I'm not gonna be able to drive down in here where I thought I would be able to see how this car would go up that grass hill like I used to, because I used to be able to go all the way down here. And again, like I said, they take ATVs down there and no one is. But you have some rock piles here, some excess rock, so we should be able to get the truck up on there and see how it does. So enough jibber jab, let's get this thing down on the ground and see how it works. You can see I threw that down. You may not have seen. Let me do that again. Quite bouncy because it's just those friction shocks. Let me throw that out here and you guys can see it wobbles and bounces, but fully proportional, and that's good. It's going to handle a lot better. Yeah, it's bouncy. That's what you expect. It's just those little, you're just relying on the springs to do all the work. Feels like it might be pulling a little to the left. Let me give it a little steering trim. But that's not too bad. That's about the speed I was expecting to see with these little, I think those are 390 brushed motors. They could be smaller, since there's two of them. They're pretty small. Yeah, that's not too bad. That's actually not bad at all on speed, considering the setup. Without any kind of speedometer here, any GPS reading, I'm thinking that's probably in the 13 to 15 mile per hour range. Not bad at all. This would be an excellent truck, I can already say, just for this little bit of running. This would be nice for a beginner. Or a kid, just getting into it. Yeah, these dual motors are going to certainly help out. And I do suspect, since you're powering two motors, that you may end up, with a shorter run time than if you're having to power it with one. But then again, those motors are not having to work as hard as one motor would. One motor running an entire four-wheel drive is going to get a lot hotter than two running, with each one running each gearbox. Let me get up here a little closer so we can see, and let's take it up here and get off road a little bit so we can test out those the dual motor system to see how that power kind of compares to other cars we've seen in the past that are just single motor powered. Yeah, that's not bad. It's going through this grass a little easier than most cars at this size because, again, you're generally powering it off one motor, and that one motor is going to struggle to supply the power. Let me just pull this weed off the truck here. There's still one stuck on there. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to get stuck in really tall grass, because you are. Whoa, that was pretty cool. Let's see if we can back it up and get out of this grass. We're stuck in a really big weed. I want to see if we can get out of it. Back it up again. Now it's just some of these big weeds get wrapped up in the wheels. And that's actually got some wood, almost wood type texture to that weed. So that was just too much for this little truck to overcome. So despite the increased power, at this size of a vehicle, you're going to obviously have a few problems with things that are really thick. Oh, we're still hitting on something. Let's see if I can. I think we can make it out. Oh, geez, I tell you what, we're having a heck of a time on some of the stuff. Again, it's these same kind of wooden type of weeds are getting wound up in the wheels, but that's more of a symptom of the size of the truck. Give it a little steering trim there. a truck of this size is just going to get caught up on weeds easier than that 1/10 or 1/8 scale. They don't tell you the size of this truck. It looks to me like it's in that 1/16 or 1/18 scale. I think it's more 1/16 looks more accurate to me. It could be, sometimes they'll exaggerate, it could be 1/14. That looks a little bit too small for that, but the Amazon listing may have the size. So the box instruction manuals don't mention anything about the size. Yeah, great for pavement, and obviously it's going to do okay off-road as long as you're reasonable about it and you're going through weeds and grass. It's not super tall and it's not super thick, so that's going to be your biggest concern. A large weed is still going to get wound up on it, but you can see we made it through there. I don't know, we could give it a try here if we could get it to go down through this. That's not too thick and we should get some momentum, so I think I'll give it a try. I just don't want to have to go out here in my shoes and get all muddy trying to retrieve it. Oh yeah, it's not gonna quite make it through there. That's what I kind of thought. I was worried about this area right here, so we'll walk around there and retrieve it. But yeah, it's just, again, that's a symptom of just too thick for this small little truck to get through here. But it did pretty good up until that point. So let's just walk back up here and see if we can give it a little push and get all those weeds. That's really thick through there. And it hasn't been mowed in a while. The grass is seeding out, so. Slashing through some water there for Robbie. Let's bring it around and do that again. I mean, obviously this is going to be splash proof. Water's not an issue. Just don't expect to be able to submerge it. The motors can usually handle it, but you're going to fry the electronics if you try to. Oop, I missed the water. Let's try to do it again. There we go. It can be kind of hard when you're driving these little cars until you get used to the steering to hit stuff like puddles and stuff, because you have to get used to how sensitive the steering is on a vehicle. And every car is different. Especially a toy gray one like this, but even though it's proportional, you don't have a high-end steering servo. Sometimes they are not as sensitive, sometimes they can almost be too sensitive. But yeah, I like the look of this little truck and this design. Just has a really cool look. I want to think it might be the Arma. Something like that makes a truck that looks like this, sort of. I'm not real good with some of those bigger brands because I don't ever really own or drive them, so I'm not always as familiar as the really big channels that only review the really high-end hobby grade stuff. And this design, you're not going to be doing a bunch of donuts, as you can see. And part of that is because that front gearbox, each one being powered by its own motor, is each grabbing a hold and keeping your traction good to where you can't as easily, even though the money of four-wheel drives single motor powered, you can still steer them and do a donut, and that's about as best I can do. I think that's due to the dual motors. I think that just the power distribution is better, and what that's doing is that's giving you more four-wheel drive power, and it's giving you better traction, in my opinion. Let's take it over here and see if we can go up on these rocks here before the end of the video, because I mean this is getting to be a bit repetitive and most people are not going to watch it past this. I'm just going to ease it up here because I don't want to have it go down through there and then good luck trying to retrieve it from there. But you can ease it up here. Now I can get off these weeds. Just see, kind of get it up here, and this is where you don't want it to go back there. Not the best area for that rock pile. In terms of the throttle, let's see just, you know, how sensitive is it. You can give it some input before it does anything. So that's just due to this cheap controller. So you give it a little bit more, and there it's starting to go. A little more. And then you're up to full speed before you give it full trigger. So that's just a cheap controller will do that. A good hobby grade controller is going to not do that, but you can't expect that on this little car at its price, being that it's a beginner car. Something I probably should test more often on these is just the sensitivity of the trigger. Something I don't ever really think to test here before today. I usually will comment on it, but it'd be good to let you guys see that, so you have an idea. And you can see that it is fully proportional. I can show you here with the tires too, the front wheels. If I give it a little bit of turn, hopefully that shows up. And it starts to turn there. It is fully proportional. The steering radius now is more than that once you give it throttle. Once you give these cars throttle, then it'll sort of push the wheels to turn more, especially when they're oversized tires and wheels like that. But again, that little cheap steering servo, you can't expect it to have the most power and the best response time or steering radius either. Only thing about that back here is I don't really have a place to jump, unfortunately. That's the one downside, but it is a very nice secluded place, this public property, up until at least those poles, and then it becomes a city water treatment plant. Boy, it stinks back this way. I can smell it. The stagnant air, there's no airflow today, so you can smell some of that sewage over there. But this is a good place to drive and fly. Just so I don't have a place to jump. Where at my typical spot behind the house, I've got that sort of natural ramp there up to the rock lane that is good for larger vehicles, but you know, you're dealing with the cemetery background, and gotta be careful not to drive the car, you know, around tombstones or anything like that. So let's back it up here and see if we can get it out. It's gonna maybe a little bit of trouble here. Let's see if we can get it out. I like to try to work these out a little bit and see if you can get out without having to. I think we will. Yep, without having to recover it. Just keep steering if you get in a situation like this, back forward, and give it a little while, and you know, half the time at least you'll probably be able to get the truck out. All right, guys, I think that wraps it up. I kind of like that attack high-speed car. I don't know so much about the high-speed part, and you got that cool skeleton graphic with the wings on it, which is pretty darn cool in your DRC branding. So pretty darn neat. This little, what was the model number on this again? The 9500E on this guy. A lot of their DRC trucks, and I don't know if this one in particular, are like PX Toys branded, and they have the same number naming conventions. And I don't know if this one is. It probably is, but it could be made just for DRC. One thing to keep in mind, and I know a lot of you guys are probably not watching the video anymore, this body has that film on it, and there's a sticker here that tells you to pull that off. Unfortunately, all these bodies are, when they manufacture them, they put this film on, and then someone in the factory says, okay, we have to put the roll cage and spoiler on, so they attach that on top of the film. Well, what happens? You go to pull the film off, and it all gets caught under all this, the roll cage and the spoiler, and then you can't get the film off easily. So of course I had to, your screws underneath the body, you got to take all those off, take the spoiler off and the roll cage, and then the film comes right off, and it looks so much better. So that happens on all these cars if they have stuff attached, because no one at the factory thinks, hey, let's remove the film. I don't know why they even put the film on these cars. I don't know what I know it's probably to protect it from scratching, but is that really going to happen in the delivery? I don't know. Someone at the factory needs to pull it off, attach it, and then that saves you. Actually probably took me 10-15 minutes to get that off, and then get the screws lined back up to attach it, and it's just a real pain in the butt. So I wish they would just not mess with that on these toys. It's not that big a deal. All right, guys, that wraps up the review of the little DRC 9500E dual motor powered, brush powered RC truck. If you're interested in this, I'll include a purchase link down in the video description. I'll also try to put a pinned comment. Be sure to check for any coupon codes. They're really good about giving me those. I don't know if they gave me one. I don't think they did yet, but I'm 90% sure that once I post it and show them the video, they're going to say, hey, let's give you a discount code. So I may not have one today, but if you're interested in this, and this is the day I posted it, come back a day or two later and before you decide to buy it and see if I do. If it's already been a few days and the code's not there, then they just haven't given me one. But usually I'll get like a 10% off code or a $5 or $10. It'll certainly give you some good savings since this is available at Amazon. All right, guys, that wraps up the review of the 9500E. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. While you're at it, click that bell. That way you're notified every time I do upload a new video. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.
The power of the dark side.